You ever wonder why some people keep winning over and over again while others, despite their kindness, good intentions, and constant self-sacrifice, stay stuck? They stay overlooked, ignored, undervalued. It's not because they're not smart. It's not because they're not capable. It's because they're stuck in a loop, a chemical, psychological, behavioral loop. They're playing the role of the nice guy. Now, when I say nice guy, I don't mean someone who's kind or respectful. I mean the person who suppresses their needs, who constantly bends, who avoids conflict at all costs, who's terrified of being disliked, the one who says yes when every cell in their body is screaming no. And here's the problem. Biology doesn't reward the nice guy. Nature doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to action, clarity, and self-directed behavior. The brain is wired to respond to assertiveness, not appeasement. Let's get scientific. The prefrontal cortex, that's your decision-making center, starts losing control when you're in a constant state of people-pleasing. You suppress your true thoughts, your stress rises, your dopamine crashes. Your nervous system shifts into a state of learned helplessness. Over time, you literally rewire your brain to become invisible. You train yourself to be passive, and the world responds in kind. It ignores you. You want to talk about respect? Respect isn't given to the agreeable one. It's given to the one who sets boundaries, who says the uncomfortable truth, who chooses being authentic over being liked. The amygdala, your threat detection system, will light up when you say no for the first time. It'll feel like danger. But it's not danger, it's unfamiliarity. That's your biology resisting change, and you have to move through it anyway. Here's a hard truth most won't tell you. Nobody is coming to validate your life choices. Nobody is handing out rewards for shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You want growth? Then you need to disrupt the system. That means embracing discomfort, risking disapproval, and standing in your own authority. That means breaking the neurochemical addiction to approval. That's real power, not dominance over others, but command over yourself. Think of the brain like a muscle. If all you ever do is train the nice circuits, people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, emotional suppression, those are the pathways that get stronger. But if you start exercising assertiveness, truth-telling, and purpose-driven behavior, you begin to rewire. You grow resilience. You build grit. You become someone who can be trusted, especially by yourself. You weren't put here to be a background character in your own life. You weren't built to be liked by everyone. You were built to evolve. And evolution doesn't reward safety. It rewards adaptation, clarity, and courage. Stop being the nice guy. Start being the real one. That's when your nervous system starts aligning with your vision. That's when the world starts paying attention. Do you want to live a life that looks good on the outside or one that feels right on the inside? The choice is yours. But understand, every moment you play nice at the cost of your truth, you're training your biology to betray you. And every moment you choose authenticity, you're training it to set you free. So decide, train accordingly. You have to understand something fundamental about your biology. Your brain does not reward you for being agreeable. It doesn't flood you with confidence or clarity for suppressing your thoughts to make someone else comfortable. What it rewards is alignment. Alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. When you're constantly people-pleasing, there's a massive disconnect across those systems. You're thinking one thing, maybe that you don't agree, that you need space, that you have a boundary, but you're doing the opposite. You nod, you smile, you say yes. That conflict creates neural dissonance. It puts the brain in a subtle but chronic stress response. Cortisol rises. Dopamine drops. Your sense of internal reward, the very system that drives motivation and purpose, starts to shut down. Over time, that habit becomes hardwired. Every time you avoid conflict, every time you silence your own truth, You're reinforcing a pathway in the brain that says, my needs don't matter. You're training your nervous system to perceive assertion as dangerous, even when there's no real threat. The prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, starts losing its influence over your choices. You stop acting with intention and start acting out of fear. And what's more, your body keeps the score. You feel it in your gut, your breath, your posture. Chronic fatigue, social anxiety, a creeping sense that you're living a life that doesn't really belong to you. This isn't just psychology, it's neurobiology. Your brain is plastic. It adapts to the behaviors you repeat. You're training your nervous system to perceive assertion as dangerous even when there's no real threat. The prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, starts losing its influence over your choices. You stop acting with intention and start acting out of fear. And what's more, your body keeps the score. You feel it in your gut, your breath, your posture. Chronic fatigue, social anxiety, a creeping sense that you're living a life that doesn't really belong to you. Now, here's something that most people don't realize. When you play the nice guy, you actually become invisible. Not metaphorically, literally. Your brain starts signaling less presence, less energy, less agency. You step back instead of stepping forward. And the world mirrors that. Socially, neurologically, and even hormonally, you begin to disappear. Let me explain how that works. When you constantly suppress your impulses, your ideas, your desires, you reduce the electrical activity in regions of the brain tied to goal pursuit and dominance behavior. The medial prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate, the striatum, all the circuits that light up when you're engaged, assertive, motivated, begin to dim. It's like slowly pulling the plug on your own internal power source. You become someone who's there, but not really. You're part of the group, but never the leader. You're in the room, but no one turns to you for direction, for truth, for strength. Why? Because you've trained them not to. Through every small silence, every unnecessary apology, every moment you held back a perspective to avoid friction, you sent a signal. I'm not a force to be reckoned with, and biology responds to force. It responds to clarity, to grounded presence, not to passive compliance. And here's what's wild. The more invisible you feel, the more your nervous system starts encoding that as identity. You start believing you're just not someone who gets noticed, just not someone who leads. But it's not a fixed trait, it's a neural adaptation. You've conditioned yourself out of relevance. And that becomes dangerous because invisibility feeds disconnection, not just from others, but from yourself. When you stop hearing your own inner voice, stop acting on your own needs, you lose the internal compass that keeps you moving forward. That leads to stagnation, depression, emotional numbness. Being the nice guy might make you temporarily likable, but in the long term, it robs you of presence. And in neuroscience, presence isn't a concept. It's measurable through neural activation, through hormones like testosterone and dopamine, through the way your nervous system communicates your energy to the room. If you're invisible, it's not because you're not enough. It's because you've turned your own signal down too low. Respect is not given to the person who agrees with everything. It's given to the one who holds their ground when it matters. Your nervous system knows the difference, and so does everyone else's. When you set a boundary, when you speak a hard truth, when you refuse to abandon your values for temporary peace, your entire physiology changes. Your voice tone lowers, your gaze stabilizes, your breath slows. These aren't just emotional shifts. They're measurable signals of neural control. You move out of a reactive state and into one of agency. The prefrontal cortex activates with more coherence. The insular cortex, responsible for internal awareness, begins to sharpen. You gain what's called interoceptive accuracy, the ability to sense what's going on inside your body and act in alignment with it. That's what confidence is. That's what people respond to. But here's the catch. If you've been operating as the nice guy, that part of your brain is undertrained. You've spent years building the skill of avoiding discomfort. That means the moment you set a real boundary, your threat system fires. The amygdala lights up. Your heart rate spikes. You might even shake or dissociate. That's not weakness. That's your biology reacting to unfamiliarity. You're not in danger. You're in growth. People can sense when someone isn't congruent. When you smile but your eyes aren't engaged. When you agree but your body's stiff. When you say yes but your energy withdraws. That lack of congruence triggers confusion and mistrust in others on a subconscious level. On the other hand, when you're congruent, when your words, tone, and body all say the same thing, it doesn't matter if people agree with you. They feel you, they respect you. That's because you're communicating from a regulated nervous system, not a fragmented one. The world doesn't respect the man who avoids tension. It respects the one who can walk through it without flinching. The nervous system is tuned to strength, not the strength of force, but the strength of presence, of stability, of truth. And that can only come when you stop needing to be liked and start needing to be real. What most people don't realize is that your brain doesn't care whether a behavior is good for you. It only cares if it's repeated. Whatever you do consistently becomes your default wiring. So if you're constantly avoiding conflict, apologizing for things that aren't your fault, holding back opinions to avoid rocking the boat, you're not just making a social decision, you're physically altering the architecture of your brain. You're reinforcing neural pathways that encode passivity, hesitation, self-doubt. The synapses fire together, the circuits lock in, and over time, the behavior becomes automatic. You're not choosing it anymore, it's choosing you. Now, the same way you can train weakness, you can train strength. Every time you speak up, even if your voice shakes, you're laying down a new track in your nervous system. Every time you say no, every time you lean into discomfort, you're forcing your brain to adapt. And this is where the science becomes empowering. The brain is plastic. It's moldable. It's responsive to effort and repetition. That means the nice guy pattern is not who you are. It's just what you've rehearsed. And you can rehearse something new. One of the core regions involved here is the anterior cingulate cortex. It plays a role in detecting conflict between competing impulses. When you start acting in alignment with your truth, it lights up, especially early on when the behavior is unfamiliar. That discomfort you feel, that's your brain remapping. It's literally trying to resolve the difference between your old conditioning and your new action. Stay with it, push through it, because on the other side is a more integrated, more powerful version of you. You don't rise to the level of your potential, you fall to the level of your training. And if you've trained yourself to be quiet, agreeable, invisible, then that's where you'll stay. But if you start training authenticity, decisiveness, and embodied presence, the nervous system evolves. The circuits of power get stronger, and eventually, you don't have to force it. It just becomes who you are. The first time you say no, when you're used to saying yes, your body won't feel relief. It will feel like danger. And that's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. That's the amygdala firing. That's your threat detection system alerting you, not because you're unsafe, but because you're doing something unfamiliar. And your nervous system doesn't distinguish well between unfamiliar and dangerous. It treats both the same, especially when those unfamiliar actions challenge your core identity. If you've spent years being the nice guy, the helper, the agreeable one, then saying no feels like you're violating a rule that your entire sense of safety is built on. But the rule is outdated. It was built in childhood or early relationships or environments where being quiet kept you safe. It served a purpose once. It doesn't anymore. From a neurobiological standpoint, discomfort is a signal of neural reorganization. The moment you start changing a behavioral pattern, you're interrupting deeply established pathways. This triggers a stress response. You'll feel your chest tighten, your stomach clench, your heart race. That's your autonomic nervous system adjusting. But if you can stay with the discomfort, breathe through it, regulate it, you start teaching your brain that this new behavior is not only safe, but effective. You start lowering the threat response over time. That's how you rewire. This process is called extinction learning. You're deactivating the old fear circuits by exposing yourself to the new behavior without the expected negative outcome. You said no, and the world didn't end. You held a boundary, and you weren't abandoned. You disagreed, and you still belonged. The nervous system starts recalibrating based on evidence, not just fear. And this is critical because without that exposure, the fear circuits stay active and the nice guy stays stuck. So if you feel resistance when you start speaking up, good. That resistance means you're pressing into the edge of your current identity. And that edge is where change happens. Not comfort, not ease, but friction. You can't rewire a nervous system without engaging it. And the engagement starts the moment you stop running from the discomfort and start walking straight into it. Your nervous system is not just responding to life, it's recording it. Every choice you make, every word you speak or swallow sends a signal through your body about what matters and what doesn't. And over time, your system learns. It adapts. So when you repeatedly put other people's needs before your own, when you lie to keep the peace, when you avoid speaking your truth to avoid tension, your nervous system encodes that behavior as safety. Not because it's healthy, but because it's consistent. And consistency, not correctness, is what trains your biology. Here's what happens neurologically. Each time you suppress your authentic response, the brain strengthens pathways tied to inhibition. It reinforces the idea that silence equals survival. But what's more concerning is what happens to your sense of self. The insular cortex, responsible for internal awareness, your ability to feel and interpret your emotions, begins to dull. Your own body's signals start to fade. You lose clarity. You start asking others what you feel, what you think, what you should do. That's not just indecision. That's neurochemical disorientation. Your nervous system has lost its compass because you've trained it to ignore your own voice. But it works the other way too. When you start choosing authenticity, even if it's uncomfortable, you activate new circuits. The nerve, which regulates calm and connection, becomes more efficient. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and decision-making, begins to reassert control. You stop reacting, you start responding with clarity, with intention. That's the biology of integrity. Your internal systems come back online. Your thoughts match your words match your actions. That alignment generates energy. It creates a feedback loop of confidence, not fake confidence, but embodied certainty, because your nervous system is no longer fighting itself. This is why the shift from being the nice guy to being the real you isn't just psychological. It's physiological. It's measurable in your breath rate, your heart variability, your posture, your hormonal profile. You don't need to force the world to respect you. You need to train your system to stop betraying you. Once that happens, respect becomes inevitable. Every single time you abandon your boundary to keep the peace, you're not just compromising in the moment, you're setting a precedent. You're training people through your behavior how to treat you. This is one of the most overlooked mechanisms in human interaction. We think respect is earned through kindness or selflessness, but in reality, respect is shaped through repeated patterns. Social neuroscience shows us that the human brain is constantly scanning for cues, strength, certainty, self-respect. And when those cues are missing, when your behavior says, I'll tolerate anything just to avoid confrontation, people unconsciously adjust. They stop asking what you want. They stop listening when you speak. They start treating you as optional, not because they're malicious, but because that's the role you've rehearsed in the relationship. This is known as social conditioning, and it works both ways. Just as a dog learns what behavior gets rewarded, people in your life learn what behavior gets access. If every time someone crosses a line you smile and let it go, the nervous systems around you begin to categorize you as low resistance, low authority, low consequence. You become the emotional sponge, the go-to for unloading, the one who's always available but rarely respected. And here's the biological cost. Your own nervous system absorbs that disrespect. It begins to manifest as burnout, chronic anxiety, even immune suppression. Your body internalizes the message you're broadcasting. My needs are secondary. But the reverse is just as true. The moment you enforce a boundary, firmly, clearly, without rage, but without apology, you send a new signal, not just to them, but to yourself. That signal says, I have value, I protect my energy, I don't need permission to take up space. That self-respect becomes embodied. Your posture shifts, your voice steadies, your cortisol levels drop while your testosterone, your dominance and motivation hormone, rises. You feel grounded, present, regulated. And people sense it, their behavior shifts, not because you asked, but because you've changed what you're available for. Respect doesn't start with them, it starts with you. Here's the critical distinction that so many people miss. Being nice is not the same as being kind. Being nice is a social strategy. It's an effort to avoid discomfort by conforming to other people's expectations. To stay in the good graces of everyone around you, you're trying to earn approval by being agreeable even when it doesn't serve you. But kindness, true kindness, has nothing to do with submission or approval. It's rooted in authenticity, in alignment with your values, in the well-being of others and yourself. Kindness includes honesty, respect, and setting boundaries. It's being real about your capacity and your limits and offering something of value without sacrificing your core needs. Neuroscience backs this up. When you say yes to someone, even when you don't want to, when you agree to do something that drains you, the stress in your body rises. Cortisol levels spike. Your body reads the situation as a threat because deep down, you're not honoring your own integrity. The result is not just internal conflict, but also a depletion of energy. On the other hand, when you say no, or when you act in alignment with your true feelings, your body responds by releasing a cascade of positive neurochemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. Those are the chemicals of connection, trust, and self-respect. That's kindness, that's health. In this sense, kindness is self-reinforcing. When you choose kindness by speaking your truth, holding boundaries, and doing things that nourish your soul, your body rewards you with a sense of calm, clarity, and confidence. You feel more connected, more grounded, and more capable of giving to others without depleting yourself. And as you align with this truer version of kindness, you also start to inspire it in others. You give them permission to be authentic, to say no when they need to stop pretending just to fit in. That's the ripple effect of real kindness. It doesn't come from people-pleasing or self-neglect. It comes from clarity, authenticity, and the courage to stand in your truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may feel at first. You need to understand this deeply. Nobody is coming to validate your choices. No one is handing out awards for playing it safe, for shrinking yourself, for waiting for someone to recognize your worth. Life does not operate on a merit-based system of kindness. It operates on a system of action, of visible, concrete results. And when you're busy being the nice guy, you're essentially waiting for someone to recognize how much you're sacrificing, how much you're giving. But here's the harsh truth. People rarely acknowledge that level of self-sacrifice, especially when it's tied to inauthentic behavior. Instead, they sense your passivity and, more often than not, they take it for granted. This isn't just psychological, it's biological. When you're constantly deferring to others, when you're waiting for approval, your brain goes into a mode of external validation. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for high-level decision-making, planning, and self-control, loses its grip on your behavior. Instead, you start outsourcing your sense of self to the people around you. This is why you can feel overwhelmed, uncertain, and even resentful, because your brain has been conditioned to look outside yourself for answers. And the more you do this, the more you feed your own sense of invisibility. You start to depend on others to give you the emotional cues of worthiness. But they don't. Instead, you feel like you're always chasing something you can never quite reach. That's because you're looking in the wrong place. The key to your sense of validation is not found outside you. When you start to set boundaries, when you stop seeking approval for every decision you make, when you start acting on your own truth regardless of others' reactions, you reclaim that internal compass. Your brain and your body react to that shift in a profound way. The dopamine system that once responded to others' approval will now respond to your actions, your decisions, your alignment with what you need and believe. That's when you begin to live in accordance with your own principles. That's when your life takes on a new momentum, because you're no longer waiting for validation, you're generating it from within. And that's the most powerful kind of validation you'll ever get. When you start choosing authenticity, especially when it feels uncomfortable, something incredible happens in your brain. Neuroplasticity kicks in. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. Every time you choose truth over convenience, every time you assert yourself instead of staying silent, you're creating new pathways. You're literally rewiring your brain to favor strength, clarity, and self-expression over fear and self-doubt. And this doesn't just happen once. It happens each and every time you show up as the real you, regardless of the discomfort that initially arises. Your brain begins to recognize that authenticity equals safety. It becomes your new default. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and long-term planning, becomes more active when you choose authenticity. This area of your brain is all about integrating information, prioritizing your values, and acting in alignment with your goals. But here's the thing, when you're constantly suppressing your true self, the prefrontal cortex gets weak. It starts to lose its ability to guide your behavior in alignment with your goals. However, when you start asserting your boundaries and showing up authentically, it gets stronger. It helps you stay true to what you value, regardless of external pressure or internal resistance. This is also where a powerful shift occurs in the body. When you align with your true self, you stop leaking energy through people-pleasing and self-neglect. Instead, you begin to cultivate energy, vitality. Your body begins to sense that you're no longer betraying your own truth, and the nervous system responds with calm and power. Stress hormones like cortisol start to decrease, while your energy-enhancing hormones, dopamine, oxytocin, become more prominent. You feel more present, more alive, and more in control of your life. This process is cumulative. The more you practice authenticity, the more ingrained these new neural circuits become. Over time, you don't even have to think about it anymore. Your actions become an extension of your internal alignment. The confidence that once felt like a foreign concept now becomes second nature. This is the real power of neuroplasticity, the ability to transform yourself at the deepest level, to create new neural habits that support your true self, and to ultimately become the person you've always wanted to be.